All right, get ready, because we are going deep, deep, deep into the Vinaya Pitaka with this deep dive.
Oh, this is going to be
It is. And you all knew this was coming. You really went all out with the sources this time.
good.
We've got excerpts from I.B. Horner's translation.
A classic.
It is a copy donated by Vin Ling Saroy.
Wow.
And even some, scholarly commentary on top of it all.
You really weren't kidding around when you said you wanted the full rundown on the Vinaya Pitaka.
No kidding. But, I think it's easy to see the Vinaya Pitaka as this kind of, rule book,
Oh, yeah, totally. A lot of people go there first.
Right.
But it's so much deeper than that. It's
Right.
really woven into, the DNA of Buddhist teachings.
Yeah. It always comes back to, Dhamma. And for anyone just tuning in, that basically means the teachings of the Buddha, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like how to live a mindful, ethical life. The nuts and bolts.
And that's where the Vinaya comes in.
Right. It's like, here's how you actually do it. How you, take those teachings and put them into practice.
Especially for monks and nuns.
Exactly. I mean, that's who it was written for.
Yeah. I was struck by something the translator said. He pointed out that these rules, they didn't just, appear out of thin air.
Interesting.
It's not like some ancient rule book that just, always existed,
Right.
These rules came about organically,
Okay.
in response to things that were happening, real situations, real challenges that popped up within the early Buddhist community.
So each rule, it's like a little window into the past.
Right, exactly.
We get to see a snapshot of what these early Buddhists were dealing with, their struggles, their disagreements, even their, shall we say, their mishaps.
I love that. Mishaps.
It makes the whole thing much more human and relatable, you know what I mean?
Definitely. And it's interesting because the Vinaya, it does lay out different categories of offenses.
Oh, yeah, it gets specific.
It really does. Some of them are minor slip-ups, things you could probably just brush off, right?
Sure.
But others, whoa, those are considered major transgressions.
Like you break these, you're out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're talking parjika, saiditsa, aniyata, which sound kind of intimidating. But it's basically a system for understanding, the severity of different actions.
It's like a sliding scale of oops to uh-oh.
Exactly. But here's where it gets really interesting. The Vinaya doesn't just look at, what you did.
Uh-huh.
It also looks at why you did it.
The intention behind the action.
Yeah. Your state of mind matters, a lot. And it plays a big part in determining how serious the offense actually is.
That makes sense, though.
It does. It's like in that story of the stolen mangoes. It's in volume 1, pages 101 and 102 of the translation you gave me.
Oh, yeah. The mango incident.
Right. So in the story, these monks, they eat these mangoes thinking they're allowed to have them.
Sure.
But turns out the mangoes were stolen.
Uh-oh.
And here's the thing. The monks didn't get in trouble for eating the mangoes.
They didn't.
Nope. They got in trouble because those mangoes were stolen.
It was the intention behind it, the act of stealing. That's fascinating.
It really makes you stop and think about, all those little actions we take every day.
Right.
And what our intention is behind them. Are we acting from a place of generosity? Or are we acting out of,
Selfishness, maybe?
Exactly.
That's a good example of how the Vinaya pushes us to think deeper. It's not just follow these rules and you're good. It's about understanding the why.
Yes. It encourages a deeper understanding of our actions and their impact on the world around us, which I think is a message that is still very relevant today.
For sure. Mindfulness is timeless. And it's not just about mindfulness, right?
Right.
The Vinaya, it takes us outside the meditation hall, too.
It does. It's not all incense and meditation cushions, is it?
Not at all. This is real life we're talking about. It shows us how the monastic community interacted with the outside world. We get a peek into the broader society of ancient India.
It really is like stepping into a time machine.
Totally.
You meet all sorts of characters.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it. You've got kings, everyday people just trying to live their lives.
We even get those, mischievous spirits. The yakas.
Oh, those guys. Always stirring up trouble.
I always picture them, hiding out in the banyan trees.
Yeah.
Waiting to cause a little mischief.
Love it. But let's not forget the less mischievous characters, okay?
Yeah.
The lay supporters, they were essential.
Oh, so important.
I mean, the Vinaya makes it very clear. The monks and nuns, they relied on the generosity of the community for everything. Food, clothing, even building the monasteries.
I couldn't have done it without them.
No way. And it makes you wonder about those interactions, right, between the monastic community and, everyone else.
It does. And speaking of interactions, there's this really interesting point the translator makes about like how we even translate the word bhikkhu itself.
Bhikkhu. Yeah, that's a tricky one.
Right. It gets at like the heart of this relationship,
Yeah.
because do we translate it as monk, which I don't know, it feels kind of formal, a little rigid maybe,
Yeah, almost hierarchical,
right? Or do we go with brother?
which has a very different feeling, more intimate somehow.
Exactly. Brother suggests this sense of community, of shared purpose, which maybe monk doesn't quite capture.
It makes you realize how much gets lost in translation sometimes.
Totally.
What?
But some things they do translate,
Oh, absolutely.
like those
Yeah.
very human experiences.
They're universal.
Exactly. And the Vinaya is full of them.
It is, even though it's, what, centuries old at this point?
Right.
But we can still relate to those stories, the jealousy, the ambition, that struggle to live up to your own ideals. It's timeless, really.
It's strangely comforting, isn't it?
It is.
Like knowing that those emotions, they transcend time and place. It's a reminder that we haven't really changed that much, have we?
Nope, still human, still messing up and figuring things out, just like they were back then.
And speaking of transcending, there's this big idea of ethical conduct in the Vinaya.
Right.
This emphasis on intention behind action. And that's something that resonates far beyond just like Buddhist philosophy, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. The Vinaya, it offers this framework for ethical living. And that's something we can all learn from, no matter what our beliefs are.
It's like it's asking us, hey, pay attention to your intentions. Think about the impact of your actions, not just on yourself, but on everyone and everything around you.
It's about being mindful, being present in our lives.
Yes, instead of just reacting to things. It's about like pausing and really considering the why behind our actions.
Exactly. And that's something we could all use a little more of these days.
It really makes you think, like if we could travel back in time, what would those early Buddhists have found the most, I don't know, baffling about our modern world?
Oh, man, so much.
Right. And the translator, he's wrestling with this idea of different outlooks, like trying to bridge this gap, not just of time, but of like completely different ways of seeing the world.
Yeah, it's humbling, isn't it? It makes you realize that our values, our ideas about right and wrong, even like what counts as a moral dilemma, none of that is set in stone. It's all shaped by like the cultural soup we're swimming in.
And the translator points out, like, some things that were totally normal back then, they might seem kind of shocking today.
Oh, yeah, and vice versa.
It's true.
Makes you wonder, what would we be doing right now that they would just be like, what?
It's like holding up a mirror,
Yeah.
not just to another time, but to ourselves.
Exactly.
I mean, we laugh about someone from ancient India trying to figure out, like, the internet.
Right? Imagine their face.
But wouldn't they find some of our modern customs just as strange?
Yeah.
Just as impossible to understand?
100%. It goes both ways. And reading the Vinaya, it's like, it challenges us to think about that, you know? Like, what do we take for granted that would have blown their minds?
Yo, I like that. What about our lives would make them say, get out of here?
Exactly. And what ethical dilemmas haven't we even thought of yet? What's coming down the road for future generations?
Whoa. That's a lot to ponder.
It is.
It's kind of mind-blowing, actually.
Right. But that's what makes this deep dive so interesting, right?
It is.
It's not just a history lesson. It's about challenging our own perspectives.
And trying to understand, like, why we do the things we do.
Exactly. Both then and now. And I love how the translator puts it. He says, the exploration of early Buddhism, it's still in its early stages.
Really?
Yeah. Like, we're just scratching the surface here. There's still so much to learn.
Wow. And to think, these texts have been around for centuries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're still relevant. They're still alive with wisdom.
So what does it all mean for us today? We've barely skimmed the surface of the Vinaya Pitaka, but hopefully this deep dive has given us a new lens through which to view it.
I think so, yeah.
It's not about just memorizing rules, but about really engaging with those human stories behind them.
Right, for sure.
And realizing how much our culture shapes our ethics, our choices, our whole understanding of what it means to be responsible.
So those themes, they're as timely as ever.
They really are. Yeah. So if you take away just one thing from this deep dive, let it be this. Don't dismiss the Vinaya Pitaka.
But that's not much more than meets the eye.
It really is. It's this incredible source of wisdom, a glimpse into a world that's vanished.
But also a mirror.
Yes, reflecting our own humanity right back at us.
And let's not forget, it's got some pretty entertaining stories in there, too.
It does. Who knew ancient monks got up to so much mischief?
They were quite the characters. But that's the beauty of the Vinaya, right?
Absolutely.
It's relatable, it makes you think, and it reminds us that this search for meaning, for a life well lived, is something we all share.
Across time and cultures.
Exactly. It's the human condition.
Well said. And on that note, thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into the Vinaya Pitaka. Until next time.